Okay, chapter 12. Continuance is strength. Japanese proverb. Aki, Poston, Arizona. Not long after Pop's return, Aki was walking down to the latrine when she noticed a strange tension in the camp. Usually, her neighbor Mrs. Fujioka would be watering her tomatoes and whistling with her little grandson playing in the dirt near her feet. But today, she saw her normally cheerful neighbor huddled with other adults, whispering, hiding their conversation from the children. It was like that all along her route. No one paused to offer her a good morning, or even a smile and a nod. What do you guys think happened? So if somebody who is normally, this is one of those contrasts, and the poster in the classroom, I think I just got bit by a mosquito. There was a poster in the classroom that said contrasts. When there's a contrast or a contradiction, you stop and ask yourself what happened. So if somebody who's normally cheerful suddenly is kind of secretive and having a secret conversation with somebody and not saying good morning, as the reader, it's your job to stop and ask what happened. Why? Why do you think they might be doing that? What's going on? Aki asked when she returned to her room. It's like everyone knows a big secret, but I don't. Her parents looked at each other. The United States dropped a very deadly bomb on Japan, her father said wearily. Wearily means tiredly. Weariness is so you're so tired. Your whole body just aches with tiredness. A lot of people are worried about their relatives in Japan. He held out a copy of the Los Angeles Times dated August 7th, 1945. The headline announced, "Atomic bomb hits Japan." Where did it happen? She asked. Hiroshima, her father replied. Do you know anyone there? Kochiken is not far, he said. Everyone knows someone not far. Aki looked at the ground, allowing her father to think in silence about his former homeland and those he had left behind. Neither her mother nor her father had immediate relatives still alive in Japan, but Kochiken had been the first home for both of them. From the other side of the hanging blanket that divided the room, Aki could hear a muffled sob. Her mother whispered, Mrs. Fujioka's family lives in Hiroshima. Are they okay? I don't think so, her father responded. The mood throughout the camp remained somber. Somber means very serious. And every morning when the newspaper appeared, Aki saw the adults huddle. Mrs. Fujioka and many others had tried to contact their relatives back in Japan, but Aki didn't know of anyone who had been able to get through. What happened to the people in Hiroshima? Aki wondered. Just how powerful was that bomb? Aki began to read the newspaper, at least the headlines, to understand what was happening. A few days later, the words on everyone's lips were Nagasaki and more deadly than the first. What do you think that means? More deadly than the first. So I'm asking the question, but I already know the answer. Nagasaki was the second city that was bombed by an atomic bomb. So first it was Hiroshima, and then it was Nagasaki. And they're saying that the bombing in Nagasaki was even worse than Hiroshima. If you guys remember at the beginning when I showed you my symbol in my historical fiction presentation, and I showed you the paper crane, that was to represent Sadako, who was a victim of these bombings. How long can this go on? Less than a week later, on August 15th, 1945, Aki read the most gigantic headline she had ever seen. The Los Angeles Times screamed, "Peace!" in letters that took up almost half the front page. Another headline under that read, Japanese accept Allies' terms unreservedly. Peace? Aki asked her father. Real peace? Yes, he replied. The war should soon be over. And then? And then we'll be able to go home. Aki felt numb. The day she had longed for was finally near. but at a tremendous cost. Tens of thousands of people had died already, and cities, sorry, had been destroyed. But what stuck in her mind was a photograph in a magazine of tens of thousands of fish floating on the water of the Sea of Japan. They had been killed by the radiation from the bombs. Aki couldn't get that image out of her mind. That is not how I imagined peace would look. Once again, they could take with them only what they could carry. This time, Aki did not struggle with what to put in her suitcase. This time, her few possessions fit easily, with plenty of room for the rag doll she had had to stuff into her luggage when she first left home. Aki looked back at the room where she had lived for so long, now empty except for what there had been there when her family first arrived: 3 beds, a table, chairs, the coal bucket, and the wool blankets. "Are you ready?" her mother asked. "I've always been ready," Aki replied. She lifted her suitcase and followed her father and mother out of the building and toward the front gate. Along the way, they said goodbye to Mrs. Fujioka and a few other friends who were still preparing to leave. Then they crossed the threshold of the gate, and Aki felt free again. And that's the end of the chapter. It's an interesting chapter. I think I'm stuck on how part of it was really, really awful, right? She hears about Nagasaki and Hiroshima and, the tens of thousands of people who died in the bombings, the entire cities and more that were obliterated. And what they don't know yet in the book, but what happened in real life, is the effects of those bombs kept killing people for generations. And at the same time, the war ending and she gets to go home. So kind of lots of different feelings. I was also thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like when she gets home. What's going to happen to Sylvia? Where is Sylvia going to go? Because right now, Sylvia is living in Aki's house. When you're done listening to the chapter, go to the Google Classroom and click on the form so that you can answer the questions or share a question, a comment, or a connection you have on the form.